There's a very old and well-known game design anecdote from the founding days of World of Warcraft. Way back during the game's inception, Blizzard purposely designed their experience system to slowly throttle itself over time. As the legend goes, they wanted a way to encourage a very specific kind of player behavior. Instead of binging their game from dawn till dusk, they wanted a player to log on regularly and only play for a few hours at a time. And in a bid to make gamers remember to go out and touch grass every once in a while, the idea was that as players received fewer and fewer rewards over time, they would make the logical decision to go find something better to do and come back tomorrow. Of course, that's not how people received it. What makes perfect sense from the developer's point of view almost seems paradoxical to anyone actually playing it. To a player, here was this game that was a lot of fun, but was punishing them for wanting to engage with it. The more you wanted to like World of Warcraft, the harder it tried to push you away. So Blizzard made a pretty simple tweak, and their second attempt was what is now colloquially called rest experience. If you have rest experience, you level up faster, playing the game slowly consumes it, and the longer you spend logged off, the more rest experience you accumulate. You might have noticed that literally nothing has changed from Blizzard's first idea. The only difference is that instead of counting down and slowly restricting the player as they play, it counts up from 0 while they don't. This is the game design version of it not mattering what you say, but how you say it. Their first attempt was a deeply unpopular red flag for the game's earliest testers, and their second attempt was so successful that it has been broadly adopted by the entire MMO industry. And the only difference between the two is framing. So let's talk about stamina bars. If you've played a lot of life sims, you're probably already noticing the parallels and see where I'm going here, but bear with me while I make sure everyone's caught up. Stamina bars are a pretty common design element in life sims that, much like World of Warcraft's experience system, are designed to help mold player behavior and the game's overall rhythm. The way it works is really basic and instantly familiar. You wake up in the morning with a full stamina bar. Every action you take slowly reduces it, and eventually, if you run yourself absolutely ragged and hit 0 stamina, your body will force you to take a nap. In game terms, this is a punishment for trying to do too much in one day, forcing you to go to the next day immediately with the added penalty of a reduced stamina bar. And that doesn't feel too great, right? Not only are you immediately forced to stop doing something that you were probably invested in doing, but now you have even less stamina on the next day to try and do it again. And while this didn't nettle life sim players quite as much as WoW's diminishing XP did, it's functioning in a very similar way to try and influence player behavior and stop them from ruining the game for themselves by mining copper for 4 hours straight. But there are some less than desirable side effects here. Different actions cost different amounts of stamina, and so players are naturally pushed towards certain stamina-light activities, where they'll find themselves out of stamina before noon. And when you're out of stamina, you basically can't play the game. There's a little bit more nuance here in the fact that you can recharge your stamina by eating food, but depending on how a game decides to push these sliders, you're kind of punished for trying to pursue certain activities, especially in the early game, which is all most players will experience when stamina charging food isn't readily available. Just like with WoW's experience system, the more you want to engage with a particular activity or get a specific upgrade, the harder the game tries to stop you. So what happens if you pull a World of Warcraft and restify the stamina bar? Well, that's Palia's way of handling it. This MMO life sim hybrid uses the exact same trick that WoW did. In Palia's version of stamina, players aren't punished for hitting 0. Instead, 0 is the base state, where you naturally start, and as you consume food, you gain stamina, or focus points as they call it in this game, and every single action you take slowly drains it back down to 0. And just like with rest experience, running out of stamina doesn't mean you have to stop what you're doing. You can spend 3 hours straight fishing with an empty stamina bar, if you really want to, but you probably won't because it's incredibly inefficient, especially when keeping your focus bar filled is a pretty easy task in this game. Instead of being punished for ignoring your stamina bar, you're rewarded for caring about it. And Palia is full of little MMO-isms like this that almost universally make it feel great to play. Palia, in general, is a bit of an odd game, but I also find it a deeply fascinating game to dig into. When you're sitting there trying to imagine the kind of bite-sized games I like to champion, something with a healthy runtime that you can actually digest in a week or two, you probably don't imagine an MMO. And as I just got done talking about last month, life sims can be pretty darn inaccessible in their own ways, too. So it's a bit of a surreal experience that right after I put a bow on all of that, an MMO life sim just kinda fell into my lap. And it turns out that when you mash the two genres together, you somehow get something instantly understandable, easily navigated, and far more respectful of your time than either of the genres that spawned it. Palia is an enigma. It's like saying 2 plus 2 somehow equals 1. The math just doesn't add up, and yet here it is. I've been really enjoying Palia pretty much from the first minute I picked it up, and I found that a lot of my enjoyment has come from the many ways the game injects MMO design concepts into the usual farming sim proceedings. Because at its core, Palia is just a farming sim where other people coincidentally kinda sometimes exist in the same space as you. For the most part, you're just playing Stardew Valley or any other farming sim I mentioned in the last video I made. You farm stuff, you mine stuff, you chop down trees, you fish, you catch bugs. All the classic loops are here, fully preserved. But it's all in the details, in the ways that those core loops are subtly influenced by MMO design. It all works largely the same as any other farming sim and will be instantly recognizable to fans of the genre, but it's spooned out just a little bit differently. Instead of a stamina bar, there's rest XP. Here's another really specific example of what I mean. Every item in the game more or less has a fixed spawn area where that thing, and basically only that thing, spawns. Kind of in the same way that every enemy in an MMORPG has a fixed spawn area. In critically acclaimed MMO Final Fantasy XIV, bandits spawn here, Ked traps spawn here, and goblins spawn here. It works the exact same way in Palia. Go here for clay, any of these spots if you want copper. If you're looking to hunt some deer or find sun-drop flowers, go here, and on for every possible crafting material in the game. Every item has a reliable spot, a glade all of its own to go plunder anytime you need that thing. It creates this neat little rhythm where every time you go out to find something, say you want to mine some copper, you notice 2 more resources lying around in the vicinity. And then 2 hours later, when you suddenly need that stuff, well, you already found it when you were out exploring before, and you slowly nudge your way out further and further, organically discovering more stuff as you explore the game world. Or look at how relationship building works. It's exactly how it works in every single life sim you've ever played. Walk up to an NPC, hand them a nice flower or something, the heart meter goes up a little bit, and then come back and do it again tomorrow. But there are 2 small tweaks. 1, Palia's definition of tomorrow isn't the next in-game day, but the next real-life day. And just like how life sims limit how many gifts you can give in a virtual week, Palia limits how many gifts you can give in a real week. And 2, each character has a list of preferred items that changes from week to week, often requiring you to talk to them to see what they need this time. And with those 2 tweaks, oh, would you look at that? I'm just doing my weeklies in an MMO with a brand new shiny coat of paint. But I also have to confess that I am enjoying this more than I do most relationship mechanics in life sims. The actual courtship process of building up someone's heart meter by handing them flowers repeatedly isn't really the part of the activity that's compelling. It's the nuggets of narrative, the parts where you actually get to talk to them that you get as a reward that I'm here for. And so if Palia wants to simplify the chore by taking out all the guesswork of figuring out what someone wants me to give them, I'm perfectly content with that. And this is what I'm talking about. Every mechanic ever conceived in a life sim is here, delivered with just a dash of MMO sensibility. What you think of when you hear the word MMO, the whole massively multiplayer part of that label, is greatly exaggerated. I don't think I've spoken 2 words to the random strangers flitting past me on the road the entire dozen hours I've played, much less engaged in any shared experiences or tackled any group content. But the rhythm, the pacing of an MMO is there. And I'm not just nerding out over pattern recognition for the sake of it. I genuinely believe that all of these little tweaks make Palia a better game. Palia's world is an extremely orderly one, which means it's also a very easy one to learn, where outcomes are predictable, easily observed, and repeatable. There is very little randomness in Palia, and every task has a prescribed set of steps. The process of exploration isn't so much discovering what lies on the other side of a hill, as it is discovering and replicating those steps for 100 different little activities. The joy I get from Palia is the same joy I get from cooking, especially in a familiar kitchen. The recipe is the same every time, every tool and ingredient is exactly where you left it, but there's still a joy in the practiced motions, in the simple labor of it, of building something you like through practiced and measured effort. The only difference is that instead of building a cake or a turkey roast, I'm building my house. Furniture crafting is, in my opinion, the pinnacle of Palia's design, where all the MMO conceits truly come together and create something special that you won't find anywhere else in the farming sim genre. If you play this game for any reason, do it to make 20 little clay amphoras that you can stick around your house. Furniture crafting sits at the intersection of two concepts that any MMO player will be intimately familiar with. One is a very MMO-inspired crafting ecosystem featuring a half-dozen different professions that all play off of each other and require interwoven materials to function. The only thing Palia is missing is an auction board where you can go buy 20 stacks of netherweave. And the other is the fashion endgame. In any MMO worth its salt, you will find a subset of the community for whom fashion is literally life. The fits are the entire point of playing, and people will go out far and wide, spend hundreds of hours pursuing specific pieces the same way real fashionistas haunt Grailed. And Palia is no different, but your own body isn't the thing you spend hundreds of hours dressing up. It's your house. This is, admittedly, partially because Palia is a free-to-play MMO with a somewhat ill-advised cash shop that requires you to spend real money to get any set of clothing that isn't a level 1 starter shirt, and so there quite literally is no fashion endgame for your virtual body. A real missed opportunity that really makes me wish Palia just had a monthly subscription, but for everything the clothing in Palia lacks, the furniture delivers. In most other professions in Palia, when you level up, you unlock one new tool. A fancy new arrow, a new smelter, maybe a new kind of plank. When you level up in furniture crafting, you unlock an entire new aesthetic style, filled with dozens upon dozens of furniture items. You get beds, tables, chairs, pots, teacups, stuff to put up on your walls. Hell, there's a limited time event going on right now that's selling special pillows you can throw on your bed. And every time you craft an item in one of these styles for the first time, you're given the option to learn even more recipes in that style. I have only begun to see the very tip of this iceberg. I've already unlocked a half dozen of these different furniture styles, and I haven't completed a single set despite putting almost all of my energy towards it. There is such an unbelievable amount of furniture in this game, from the biggest centerpiece to the humblest little cup. You will never be wanting for ways to express yourself and decorate your house. But even on the mechanical side, this system is the linchpin that motivated me to engage with almost everything else in the game. Depending on what you're trying to make, you need rocks to make glass, wood to build a good table, forage plants to make some nice bed sheets. Sometimes you even need to farm up some wheat to make some of the more superfluous decorations like this harvest wreath. All of these requirements always have you stepping outside to go do something different every trip. And because of this, I've never once found myself tediously pursuing the same activity for 2 hours at a time because of the many delicate ways that each activity requires resources from another. You can't just hunt deer for hours on end because eventually you'll have to get the materials to make more arrows, and you can't chop trees to make arrows forever because eventually you'll have to fix your axe. I have to say, it's a far more interesting way of encouraging player behavior than a stamina bar. And at the pinnacle of this carefully balanced hierarchy of needs is furniture crafting, the apex of what Palia has to offer, and quite frankly, what I wish some other professions, even inside the same game, would emulate more. Imagine if cooking worked the same way instead of just giving you one new recipe every time you leveled. Imagine if there were more types of animals or bugs to chase after, with specific materials you can gather for bait or unique equipment needed for each. Imagine if you could make clothes. At all. Pretty much all of the best parts of Palia stem from the way it borrows from the MMO genre, but it's particularly telling that the few places where I could offer something even close to a criticism are also the ones where it isn't enough of an MMO. What's missing from Palia is something to push players to interact. Group content, crafting specializations that require players to lean on each other, a player-run economy, as well as the sheer excessive scale of an MMO. Like a lot of MMOs, Palia's design is definitely a bit of a treadmill that would benefit from always having a newer, shinier glade to explore on the horizon. And with only 2 zones, that horizon gets filled in pretty quickly. But such things aren't really feasible to hold as complaints against the developer. I recognize that scope is a real thing that needs to be managed, and the developers have been pretty clear in stating that that's simply not the kind of game they want to make. Though if there was any one thing I wanted from Palia, it would simply be more. Just physically more. But I don't want that to distract from the joy of what we actually have. Palia is a phenomenal little game, and most importantly, it's one you can pick up and start having fun with almost immediately, far faster than many other games of its ilk. I won't do a whole 15-minute dissertation on how it maps to the many tenets I laid out when I looked at the life sim genre as a whole last video, but if you have seen that video, I can tell you that this game could easily find a podium spot on my list of favorites. If you need yet another life sim recommendation, this is an extremely easy one. And speaking of easy recommendations, if you want to help keep the lights on here at First 5, I recommend you head over to my Patreon and pitch in a $5. If you do, you could join this list of wonderful folks already supporting First 5 that I literally would not be able to keep working on this channel without. So let's take a quick minute to thank all the brave pioneers that support First 5 out of the kindness of their hearts. Without your contributions, First 5 would not be able to function. And if you didn't catch it already, be sure to check out my video, The Time-Strapped Gamer's Guide to Life Sims, where I spend way more time digging into the genre, its challenges, and how new titles are making it more accessible all the time, just like Palia. But either way, I hope you have a good one.